You wouldn't have greater force. That's like one man in a house against an entire police force surrounding you. If you died in a shootout with officials of the workers' state, it would be considered suicide.
I have guns already. Before we talk of having to refuse to give up my guns, what happens if I refuse to be arrested?
What happens whenever anyone threatens the workers' state with weapons? At that point it would cease to be non-compliance and become a counter-revolutionary act against the workers' state. All efforts would be made to take you alive, disarm you, then deport you without possibility of return. By that point you shouldn't have any guns, because, unless you are in a workers' militia under workers' control, or part of the international army, private citizens will no longer have the right to carry weapons.
Death. For utter refusal in all cases, including refusal with greater force?
I never said that. Quote, where I say that. Death is not a sentence that would be given, but you can't start shooting at the workers' militia and expect them just to stand there and die. Of course force will be met with force, but it would be in everyone's best interest for a citizen to survive. If you would rather go out in a blaze of glory, that would be called suicide, not a death sentence.
So, if I refuse to be deported, and I do so with greater force than they use to arrest and deport me, you are saying that someone coming to me and shooting me is suicide, correct?
I assume you would be shooting back at them if they kill you. Someone coming to you would be someone asking you to please come with them to the airport or foreign consulate. Like I said, no sane person would stand and be shot.
How does the conversation go? You play the agent and ask, please come with me. I say, no thanks. Have a nice day. Then you say, what?
You would already have been told through a trial that you were to be deported in a specific day. I would assume after the sentence of deportation comes down you would have an ankle bracelet to keep tabs on you. The simple response would be I am sorry, but you have to come with me now by order of the people.
Before arrested for the trial, you say, please come with me. I say, no thanks. Have a nice day. Then you say what?
I'm sorry, but you have to come with me now by order of the people.
Sorry, no. Now you would say, or do, what?
There wouldn't be anything said. You would be put under forcible arrest and taken into custody. That's simple.
You would attempt this forcible arrest, to which I would resist. Then what would you say, or do? Would it be an escalation of force?
Of course there would be an escalation of force. Let's put it this way, if you force the subject and use physical force, you will be overpowered, and taken out kicking and screaming all you like. If you attempt to use deadly force, you will be shot. But again, you won't have a gun by this point. So you would just be dragged out then.
If at this point, in the nice conversation we have at my door, you use force to take my gun, or put me on trial, or to deport me, and I respond to the force you refer to with deadly force, that is the point you are saying, I will be shot? Is that correct?
Correct. Deadly force will be met with deadly force. It's rather a simple thing to understand. You shot, we shot back, you die by your own doing. All this, knowing that the worst that would happen is deportation, thus it being on your hands.
Okay, let's clarify. You come to me to politely ask me to comply, and I refuse. You then insist I comply with greater force. I escalate force and shoot you. You then escalate with greater force and shoot me. Is that correct?
If you reached for a gun you would be shot, but for all purposes, yes. You shoot, you die. That would be a consenting choice made by you, not the state.
A choice made by me, when you come to my home, prepared to use escalating force on me, to ensure that I comply. Is that correct?
The revolutionary militia would show up ready to use any force necessary to carry out the main political purpose.
Okay. What if, say, 20% of the 300 million Americans refuse to comply in the same fashion? Will this produce the same end?
That would be unlikely. After the first hundreds, the rest would comply. I do not see people deciding to use force over unrest. They don't in a capitalist nation, and they wouldn't in a communist one.
I'm not asking about likelihood, just the same hypothetical you and I just described for myself. I'm only changing the number from 1 to 60 million. Would the same response to my non-compliance be applied to them?
Without question. Keep in mind that a glorious death would end in the same result. You would be taken care of, and your wealth will be confiscated by the state. All those that are deported lose what they have to the state.
So, refusing to be part of socialism in every circumstance I've questioned you on would result in my death?
That would be your choice. No socialist government would have capital punishment. There would be detention for petty crimes, re-education for social crimes, and deportation for counter-revolutionary activities.
Now that Amsterdam is a conversation, and I have to tell you, it's one of the richest I've ever had. Thank you. Now I'd like to know. Without question, 60 million would face the same fate. How about 100 million?
As many as would be possible, until all counter-revolutionary acts are eradicated. That is very unlikely of happening, but at some point more aggressive punishments may have to be used to deter counter-revolution. Permanent re-education facilities would have to be built. Through hard labor, group activities, increased education along socialist principles, a great many would be rehabilitated.
As many as would be possible. What is the maximum percentage of the American population before it would not be worth it?
It is unlikely more than 20% would resist a new way of life. There would be too many benefits from the system.
Again, I'm not talking of likelihood, but just asking the hypothetical. What is the greatest acceptable percentage?
If the question is the percentage that I'm comfortable with, in order to keep the revolution alive, it's 99%. Of course that's just me. In reality the percentage would be far less. However, I am confident no more than 20 to 30% will resist.
Okay, so what exactly is fair about this socialist non-utopia? Or, am I wrong about it enforcing fairness? If so, what does it accomplish, and who does it accomplish it for?
The socialist state would be controlled by the workers, and free them from the yoke of for-profit interests. The goal is a classless society of cooperation, where the state will eventually wither away and money itself becomes antiquated.
This classless society is trying to make things what? Fair?
Equal.
Only equal, for those who don't resist?
Those that resist will be treated the same, as everyone would be treated that resists.
Everyone equally gets one bullet. What do you mean? I'm asking how it's equal to kill those who resist.
Because the good of the many outweighs the good of the few.
60 to 80 million are the few?
Yes.
After 60 to 80 million suffer their equal fate, what percent of the survivors only comply because they are afraid to join the 60 to 80 million?
I'm not a mind reader.
The plan is yours? Take a guess.
It makes little difference to me. While socialism forms, the good will outweigh any negatives this minority may see.
I understand the good versus bad part, but I am curious how many you think will just comply out of fear. Most? Some? 90%? You must have studied socialist revolutions with these elements, and must have some idea.
10%.
Okay, so 10%, or 30 million, will comply out of fear, leaving 190 million that are enthusiastic socialists. Some of those, for sure, have lost relatives in the cleansing, but that would be pretty difficult to even predict. Any further cleansing of the elderly, the infirmed, the sick, or the mentally ill?
Why would anyone want to get rid of the elderly, infirmed, or mentally ill? That's just propaganda BS.
Okay, good. I'm very relieved. Any religious compliance laws? Any or all, outlawed? You mentioned a secular education. Does that mean there can be no mosque, temple, church or home-based schools?
All schools will be secular and all children must attend. There will be no homeschooling allowed. All education will be free from the state, and the education system itself will be governed by the teachers themselves and political representatives.
What happens to those who practice religions and teach children that way? The same fate as those first 30%?
There must be laws. Children's attendance will be mandatory.
Sorry. Laws that declare what, concerning religion?
Religions are fine at home, but a secular scientific curriculum will be used in state schools.
Are there restrictions on public display and proselytizing of any religions? If so, any penalties for those who refuse to comply?
The state will be officially secular. There will be no proselytizing or any religious overtones permitted on public property, which would be most, if not all, property.
Do parents raise their children to adulthood, or does the state do this largely? Is there a point where children are weaned from their parents and sent elsewhere? If so, when? Do young people choose their jobs or is it determined by the state after testing?
These are all points that will be decided after the revolution based on the up-to-date data available.
Amsterdam 78. You have been very candid and I appreciate it very much. I'm sure you have other things to do, as do I. I have only two remaining questions for today. Fairness is defined as what, and is there a point in your mind when this definition is negated through its level of imposition?
Fairness is a relative term. Was it fair when the United States attacked the Soviet Union in 1919? I prefer to think of it as a sliding scale. Of course all my opinions could be for nothing if the workers' state decides against it.